Nurse.org and Major League Sports teams are honoring nurses with discounted game tickets and once-in-a-lifetime experiences. From throwing the first pitch to riding the Zamboni to on-court recognition, join the fun. Visit nurse.org/nurse night to find a nurse appreciation event near you and grab your discounted tickets today.
The Love and Leary podcast is where nursing leadership, innovation, and real talk come together. Hosted by nurse leaders Marion Leary
and Rebecca Love.
The show dives into the issues that matter most to today's nursing community.
Each episode features candid conversations, expert insights, and bold perspectives on healthcare, leadership, advocacy, and the future of nursing. Whether you're a clinical nurse, nurse leader, or another healthcare changemaker, Love and Leary offers thoughtful dialogue and practical takeaways to inform, inspire, and empower nurses at every stage of our careers.
All right, friends, I am so excited to have our guest on the Love and Leary podcast today. So I don't know how many of you know this, but I am one of the co-organizers of Philadelphia Science Action. We were the group that put on the March for Science events back in the first Trump administration, and we're the group that has continued on with the Stand Up for Science rallies, specifically in Philadelphia, which is why I'm so excited to have Colette Delawalla on the Love and Leary podcast today to talk about where we're at with the NIH federal funding scene these days, and also what we can do to fight forward. And so, Colette, thank you for coming on and talking with us, and for bringing your puppy on.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for having me. I was delighted when you reached out. It's exciting to be able to meet all of the people who have been involved with Stand Up for Science in various places from the beginning. So thank you for your work, just, the activism and the protesting and all of that. And thanks for having me on.
Well, and thank you for what you've done to found Stand Up for Science and turn it into this national movement, because it's what we really need right now, a collective voice, a collective action group moving things forward. So just to start, for our listeners who might not know you, can you talk about your background and how that work led to what you're doing today with Stand Up for Science?
Yeah, sure. So I just wrapped up my PhD in clinical psychology at Emory University. I was putting the final touches in submitting my dissertation grant to the NIAAA, which is a segment of the National Institutes of Health that studies alcohol use and alcohol use disorder. And I'm an addiction scientist. I study the general population. Like any good grant proposal, I had done some preliminary work in a general sample that aligned with the 2020 US Census. And in that, I obviously had to describe who made up my sample. And surprise, there were women in it, there were Black people in it, there were gay people in it. Surprise. And days before the deadline, where I was submitting, this grant that I worked on for 9 months to write, it was my first major grant, the banned words list came out. And woman was on the list, community, Black, LGBTQ, vulnerable. And I study what makes people in the community vulnerable to alcohol use disorder. I study compulsive alcohol use, so sort of the most extreme form of alcohol use disorder. And I was told by my grants office, we don't have any guidance for this. Our suggestion is that you take the words out. And I was like, I'll be damned if I take the word woman out of my grant after fighting as hard as I have to become a woman scientist. I am a community college graduate. I paid my way through school. I worked through school. I have a very typical trajectory. And I also had but at the time my son had just turned 1. So I was also a mom. So go fuck yourself. Right? Right. We're not doing this. Yeah. And it was so un-American to me. And I just felt it so viscerally. And I thought like surely, because it was a major grant deadline, like lots of people had that same deadline. It's not like it was specific to me. And I thought, my God, surely I'm not the only person who is just livid right now. And I trolled through Reddit and Facebook and Instagram and, the Twitter and Bluesky and everywhere to see if there were, protests happening. Cause I just couldn't believe like, oh, we're banning words now. Like we're 3 weeks in and we're banning the word woman from science. Are you shitting me?
Right.
And I could not believe that there was not anybody doing anything. Like I couldn't believe that I couldn't find a protest. And listen, I was ready to hop on a plane that day and I couldn't find anything. And I had this big moment of like, well, you've got two options. You can sit there and wish that somebody else would do something, or you can do it. And like, if I don't like try to do something, then I mean, at least if I try, I can say that I tried. And so I put it on Bluesky that we were going to do a Stand Up for Science protest. I picked the date because it was a funny day where there were some members of Congress who were in district and some who were in DC. So it sort of allowed for the option for people to be in DC or like in their own, state house. And I thought, 3.5 weeks was plenty of time to plan a protest. I thought 50 people would come though, just so I'm clear. I didn't realize what it was going to turn into. And then we did it. And it was the first organized, protest of Trump 2.0. We mobilized tens of thousands of people across the world. That will never not just like blow my mind. And I mean, it was fabulous. And then of course, I'm not an activist by training. And so afterwards, the question was like, well, what do we do? Like what's the next step here? And I thought that institutions and existing organizations would step into the gap. I thought that they would be like, okay, there's a hunger here. We've got resources. Let's put those resources to use. Like now's the moment. Oh, sweet summer child I was. Oh my God. I can't believe, like now looking back on that, I'm like, you dummy. Like you idiot. Because they were never going to do that.
You don't know, right? And so
That's right. Yes. I'm now well acquainted with the cowardice of institutions. But I was so disappointed. And I was like, what are these institutions doing? And then I had another like, okay, well, they're not going to do it. You've got to do it. And it was very clear to me that like the gap of the political machinery that was needed for this moment and how these institutions were not like even legally set up to be able to engage. And they could have done it in 20 minutes, but they didn't. But they weren't even legally set up to engage in the ways that needed to be engaged in, much less from like a meeting the public where they are, which is on social media, and really sort of taking that approach. And so I built something to fill that gap, and that's Stand Up for Science.
And let's talk about social media for a second, because I don't know if you know the history of the March for Science, but a lot of it came out of social media and specifically Twitter. That's how the Philadelphia chapter happened. It's how the March for Science nationally came about. And, the power of social media, I think, can't be understated in today's world of activism and advocacy and being able to bring people together. How have you seen it either help Stand Up for Science or conversely, have you seen it sort of put up barriers for what you're doing?
Okay, so two parts to that. First of all, I've had the great pleasure of spending a lot of time and talking a lot to Jonathan Berman, who is the person that made the Twitter post, the tweet for the original March for Science. And so it was kind of funny, especially in the beginning, to have like there were only 2 of us in the world that knew what it was like to like do this really specific thing. So him and I have kind of a funny special bond because it's just this like really specific experience. I don't think that I can think of a single downside that Stand Up for Science has experienced by being as like prolific and hardcore about social media as we have been, with the exception, but so I'm going to say this, but there's a caveat. The only downside is that people see the way that we post on social, how we engage on socials. And for a long time, it turned like lots of like philanthropy and foundations and stuff away from funding us because they thought that we were too edgy. And some of them have sort of started to come around, but also, I'm sorry, I'm going to say, like, we're going to say all these things anyway. And if it's not on social media, it'll be on our like old school email list, right? So it's not the way that we're saying the messages. It's the actual messaging that they have a problem with. I think that social media has been enormous for us. We would not exist if like without social media. It is, and it's tricky because like, yes, the algorithm really dictates like what makes it to the top, but if you can understand, and like there are ways to understand how the algorithm works, it can be such an effective tool to really begin to sort of like work hard against what we're fighting. And let's not forget that the battleground is on social media. Yep. Like most Americans get their news content off of social media. Most Americans get their health and wellness and fitness content off of social media. And so you cannot overlook social as like the battleground of Trumpism, really.
You know, Colette, I love this because I remember I showed up at the Boston Stand Up for Science rally. And to your point, I think all of us, this grassroots effort, we're waiting for the establishment to step in and take the lead. And I think Marion and I often feel this way in our space in nursing. And I remember both her and I showing up at Stand Up for Science, being the only nurses in that audience.
Oh, yeah.
Showing up at our states because nurses traditionally hadn't seen themselves as part of the science community. And I remember both her and I ended up taking stages in different parts of the country and saying, we need our nurses here. We need the largest workforce in healthcare here, that this is a fight for all of us to take action. And to your point, not all of us have ever been activists. And I think that we have been waiting this whole time for our establishment to lead. And what you realize is that it's never going to be the establishment. And that is what I want to applaud you and then taking to social media, because it is finding people that are everyday people feeling like they can make a difference and taking it upon ourselves. And so when you're looking at the science community, Colette, what do you see as happening? I mean, I remember listening to some of these speakers and they're like, look, I'm much more comfortable in the back of a lab. Like, I never saw myself to be out on the streets. Like, I am not comfortable being here. What are you seeing happen since you've started to bring this community together? And do you feel like scientists are sort of taking this new role in this time in a way that we haven't traditionally seen them be involved in sort of national policy and democratic issues before? But can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing?
Yeah. First, I just want to acknowledge the the nurse question, right? And like, are nurses a part of science? And like mathematicians have had this same question to us. Science teachers have had this same question. And it's not scientists standing up. Like, that's not the name of the organization. It is Stand Up for Science. You can that means artists are welcome, right? And I want to be so explicit about that because this is we are building a big tent. And like the sort of admission bucket is like, are you against fascism? Yes. Come on in, baby. Let's do it. Right. Like, that's kind of the like door, the question at the door. And if I just say that to make the point that in my view, we've really tried to build something that's super inclusive. And so I love that you guys are nurses and that this is a nursing podcast and we're having this conversation because, to your point, nurses are the largest workforce in healthcare. Like, nurses are the ones who are applying the science. Yep. And you can't overlook that. I'm in clinical psychology, so I've done some research with nurses. And so anyway, I love you guys. You guys are scientists in my book.
Well, and you should know that Rebecca and I are both the co-chairs of Nursing is STEM Coalition, which is pushing for nursing to be designated a STEM field, by
it should be. I agree.
Government.
I'll sign on. If you have a petition, Stand Up for Science, we'll sign on. But okay, so that's my first answer. But the second actual question that you asked, it's really interesting. I think that right now we're to a point where people have sort of firmly landed in their camps, right? Like if you're not acknowledging at this point in August of 2026 that what we're experiencing is outside of the norm, that like Trump is a freaking monster, that this, that the Trump administration is degrading our democracy. Like if you're not on that same page, then in my view, there's been this real like split. So there are people who are like, I'm going to keep my head down, act like everything is fine. Let's just pretend that things are normal. And then there is a large group of people who are like, we are not keeping our heads down. This is not normal. This is directly tied to democracy. And in the first year, really until the OMB thing, I feel like the OMB issue, if you at this point haven't decided, like if you looked at the whole OMB rule and you were not like, oh, sorry, Bija's getting squirrely.
Oh my God, I love it so much.
So if you looked at the OMB rule and you were not like, this is a problem, like if that didn't do it for you, you're not going to be a part of the movement. And I'm totally fine with that. Like we asked you if you were down with fascism at the door and you were like, yeah, it's not that bad. So like, sorry, you're not involved. But all of that to say, like, I have seen a surprising number of people, frankly, who are like, listen, I've never been to, Stand Up for Science was my first protest I ever went to. And now I've been to 3 No Kings events, or protesting isn't really my thing, but I put on a frog suit and it made me feel a little bit better. And like, now we're doing it. So I am consistently really, really pleasantly surprised at individuals stepping up. Institutions, I'm pissed about. I'll be pissed about till the day I die. Individuals going out on a limb, having the conversations, pestering the hell out of their members of Congress, making sure that they're voting in every single election they can vote in, really locking in and understanding that this is not necessarily like a forever form of living, right? Like if we can just fight it now, I think we're going to have a lot more, peace and prosperity and like betterment in the future. And so I've been very pleasantly surprised at the way that individuals have come around. My current favorite example of this is Holden Thorpe, the editor-in-chief of Science magazine, who we had like public, I would say it was a conversation, but we had like a pretty loud public conversation, like back and forth on LinkedIn, on Substack, and he's kind of calling me like a hot-headed activist or like something along those lines. And he came around on the OMB stuff. Like, I think that the OMB thing, I was like, welcome to the resistance, Holden. Like, let's do this. And so I think that we have reached the point, though, of like, if you're not on the right side of history right now, like, yes, you can be, but I think we'll see fewer people jump over.
Hey nurses, looking for exclusive discounts? Nurse.org has you covered with deals on everything. Save big on the essentials you need to excel in your career. Don't miss out. Visit nurse.org/discounts for the latest discounts made just for you.
So I wonder then, so let's transition a little bit to where we're at with the federal funding cuts that are going on. Because I wonder, once you start attacking people's funding, if that will draw more researchers, more scientists over. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on and your thoughts on if that will potentially draw more people over?
So, I think that you have to sort of pull back and look at the forest from the trees, right? So what is happening in federal funding is just it's a symptom of a larger issue. And that larger issue is like an attack on democracy, like attacking independent centers of thought that do not align with or do not support or do not produce products that support the ideology of this administration. Like that's what's happening. And so I kind of bristle at even the thought of thinking about this in terms of federal funding and people only engaging if it's a cut to their grant, because people being snatched off the streets by ICE like should be a thing for you. You know what I'm saying? Like that should be.
I totally agree with you, but everybody has their line, right? And so
So if somebody's line is like, okay, our grants are being cut. Here's the thing: science is not the golden calf. Like today, your grant isn't being cut, but they're gonna find a way to cut your grant. they're going to, because they want the money for themselves. Like that's what is happening right here. So, I every single day actually think about the, they came for the communists, but I wasn't a communist, so I didn't say anything. Then nobody was there when they came for me. And so I think that what we're seeing right now is like a lot of scientists have had their funding impacted in some way or another, or they're feeling it because they couldn't take a grad student because their university's funding was impacted, or they have students who are on visas and they can't get back into the United States. Like there are so many different ways that they're being impacted. I think that people have really kind of woken up to this is a lot bigger than federal funding. What do I expect from federal funding? Continued cuts, but probably to a lesser degree. Like I would expect to see, the down 5% or like even, which is down because of inflation, and then continued rearranging of where that funding is going. I think that that's probably a pretty like solid thing to expect. And at the same time, we are really seeing, like, Jay Bhattacharya just came out the other day and was making points about we're just not going to measure anything that has to do with public policy anymore, I guess, which is just insane to me.
Colette, you're making some very good points on where people's lines have stood and, who's coming around and, where things are happening. And, I remember just seeing a social media post, I remember they first came for the communists. I remember the rest of the poem at this point in time, right? So we're going to stand up now. And I think, to your point, there is a lot of questions in this community and others on how much to engage, how to engage, and to keep up the positivity and the energy against it. So, I think to your point, we watched what was happening with the funding cuts, and then we saw the OMB regulations change, and this movement by largely one or two individuals sounding the alarm that gets other people to do it. So, Colette, if you were going to talk to this audience, which are largely nurses, and we talk about this all the time, Marion and I, how do you keep up the energy and the movement? And what advice would you have for those that are paying attention? They want to get involved, but they also recognize that they're feeling like there's so many issues. How can they be effective?
Yeah, that is such a good question. Number one, pick a lane. Like just pick a lane, commit to your lane. There are other people doing other things. If you spread yourself across all these lanes, and you'll feel paralyzed and you'll feel like you can't do anything because there's just too much to do. And that is not helpful. So just pick something. Yeah, right. Like this is me putting my clinical psychologist hat on right now. Right. So just pick a lane. And maybe as a nurse, your lane is, vaccines? Like an obvious lane that lots of nurses may be interested in. Maybe you're a nurse at a VA and it's veteran affairs. Like maybe you're a nurse at a state hospital and it's making sure that, folks have access to Medicaid. Like pick a lane and just commit to that lane. And my fun little trick that I like to do is just calling one member of Congress's office on your way into work every day. Just one. And most of the time it's going to be a voicemail. Maybe you'll get a nervous, intern on the phone, but like the member of Congress isn't going to answer the phone. But just say, hey, it's Colette again. You know me. I'm with Stand Up for Science. Just wanted to remind you that OMB thing is still, pushing. You're in the House. When that CR bill comes through, I'm asking you to support the CR as it is written. I'm asking you to support, to revoke the rule, and just every day, like have a little something that is squarely within your lane. I think that so this is, again, I'm putting my clinical psychology hat on. Behavioral activation is like the best thing that you can do when you're feeling helpless or stuck. Just doing something. Like just something. We do have an action center. It is fighttowin.standupforscience.net. And we have an auto dialer. We have an auto emailer. So we have like various templates that you can use. You can sign different petitions, but just like do one thing a day. And maybe your one thing is a protest. And maybe your one thing is that you've sent an email, or maybe your one thing is that you had dinner with a friend and you brought up something to do with science, right? Like you told a story, or there was something in your lane that you'd had an opportunity to talk to your friends about. Like those conversations are so important. Also, Everybody should be registered to vote. Check your voter registration and vote in every single election. No, and I'm not just for federal level. Politics are local. All politics are local because the people who succeed in local environments are the ones that become representatives and senators later. So if they're shitty there, they're going to be shitty here. So that's why all politics are local, and you need to register to vote and vote.
Love it so very much. So, as we're starting to wrap up, and we know that Stand Up for Science is more than just one rally event a year. What other actions are you all working on right now that folks can get involved in?
Yeah, so we have, last week, we launched a big petition and campaign around Dr. Fauci. And the purpose is less to do with, anything particular with him, except for to get the Senate to walk back having held him in contempt of Congress, and more to highlight, I know, right? Like it's ridiculous. More to highlight, though, that this is the administration making an example of one public health scientist, of one, public servant who dedicated 50 years of his career to serving the American public, and saying that if you step out of line, if you present things that make the administration uncomfortable, you can be drug out in front of the Senate and have to testify and be held in contempt of Congress. And so our purpose in doing this, we're asking people to sign the petition. You can also, though, email directly afterwards your members of the Senate to let them know, hey, I'm asking you to revoke this holding of contempt. And the purpose here is just to say, we're aware of the games you're playing. We're aware that this really has less to do with Fauci himself. This is about rewriting COVID history and scaring scientists and scaring public health officials and public servants. So that is one of our big things. We're actively working on some stuff around the call to action Higher Education Compact 2.0. So stay tuned for that. We've got the NSF OMB/OMB public comment period that is open until August 24th. So we've got several campaigns that are still cooking, and then we're actively involved in midterms, and we'll be doing a whole bunch of phone banking and canvassing. So sign on to our email list so you can get all these updates. Donate if you have the means or desire to do so, please. And yell in our direction if you want to volunteer. We've got volunteer links too.
Well, Colette, thank you so much for everything you're doing to help others stand up for science. Rebecca, any final thoughts or questions?
Colette, I just want to say to everyone who's taking action, thank you. I think the world is defined in moments when you feel that there is no one else and you're compelled to act. And the truth is, great movements always start with one person that lead to small groups to change the world. So thank you for what you're doing. Know that it matters and that every day the future is better because of the effort that you're making. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for having me on, and just appreciate the work that you're doing too. And I can't tell you how much I love the effort of pulling in nurses under the STEM umbrella. It is long past due. It is long past time. So it's a really cool effort, and I'm excited to see it.
Well, thank you. And thank you for bringing your puppy on. She was the first puppy on our podcast.
Yes.
So.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love that. Yeah, she's snuggled up at my feet now. She was like, I don't want to be on camera anymore.
All right. Well, thank you, Colette. Thanks for listening to the Love and Leary podcast. We hope this conversation sparked new ideas, challenged your thinking, and reminded you of the power nurses have to lead change.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it. You can find more episodes and join the conversation wherever you do your podcast listening.